Hello and welcome to On the Brighter Side. I'm your host, Monica Tanner, and I'm really excited about this episode of Conversations with Interracial Couples. Today, we're sitting down with my new friends, Claudia and JereMy Rankins. It would seem as if these two people came from two separate worlds. Claudia being born and raised in Mexico until the age of 10, and JereMy a bad boy from a large city in Texas. The two met while attending college, where JereMy was working on his psychology degree after serving 5 years in prison, and Claudia was preparing to attend law school on the other side of the state. With their willingness to work together and continued devotion of time and communication, the two fell in love. 8 years later, JereMy and Claudia have accomplished their career goals and have a young family. This may sound like a happily ever after ending, but like so many other families, they have experienced struggles. Some of their struggles are associated with cultural background and differences, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you guys doing?
We're good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I love your wedding picture in the background. That is a beautiful backdrop. So I want
Thank you.
to hear a story about how you guys met and fell in love.
Well, Monica, I've been on before, so I'm going to hand it over to Claudia and give her side of the story.
I was interning at this firm and I was helping people that were in prison, and I walked in there one day and I saw these men in there and I fell in love with them. No, it's not like that. That's what a lot of people think. And they think I'm a lawyer. And he has been in prison. No, it's not like that. We used to attend the same college, the same university, and we were living in the same apartment complex. He used to be on the first floor. I was on the third floor. So I used to see him pretty much every day. I met him my last semester when I was getting ready to go off to law school. And he used to have this adorable puppy. She was just so adorable. Until this day, I still believe he used that puppy to get girls' attention. Because I used to tell my friends, man, the guy downstairs, he's always with girls, man. He's using that puppy. And, I refused to be one of those girls. But slowly but surely, he started winning me over. Because he would always make like small talk, and he would compliment me on how I was dressed or that I was going to church, and he would ask me for the newspaper for the puppy so the puppy could pee. He also used to work down the street at a convenience store. So I used to stop for coffee on my way to work because I just enjoyed talking to him. He was he was a very happy, funny person to be around. And we just started like hanging out, and I didn't want to fall in love because I was getting ready to go to law school and I had never been in love. I told him, hey, I don't want to have a boyfriend. I don't want to do that. We can be friends. But he just won me over. I remember when he dropped me up at the apartment the last day when I was getting ready to move, and I was just so heartbroken. I remember me looking back and I was like, I don't want to let go of this guy. I really thought that was the last time I was going to see him. I remember him taking off on his car and I said, probably never going to see this man again. Well, about a month later, he shows up at my apartment here in Houston to surprise me. And he told me that he wanted to start a relationship with me, and we were going to figure out how to do a long distance relationship together. It was hard. It was hard for 3 years, but we fell in love. I mean, we used to stay up on the phone talking about our goals and what we're going to do. And later on, he moved to Houston to continue school. And look, here we are now. We have a family. We're married. And yeah, that's our love story.
You left out the part, and maybe JereMy can address this, but you had been in prison. Talk about how you kind of brought that up, and what was your reaction to that, Claudia?
Our initial deep conversation, our intimate conversation started off with politics. We had been trading views and talking about elections. And mind you, I'm from a large city and I was just going to this small town for college. And so she says, oh, really? So who are you voting for on our local election? And so that kind of started us really getting intimate and knowing each other. And since we were on that topic on politics and things of that nature, then that's when I talked to her about, hey, I'm not going to tell you right now. I'm going to tell you in the future, but I have been in some legal trouble in my past. And then she took it upon herself to do her own little investigating. So that was a boundary.
What?
Yeah. For me, that was kind of offensive because I wanted to come out and tell her on my own. And so that was like our first little argument, our disagreement, I should say.
So yeah, I remember the first time he mentioned something, he said, oh, I was in this place for 5 years. And that's why when later on he made the other comment about I've been in some legal trouble, that's why I kind of got curious. Honestly, I never used it against him. Like I told him, I said, I made you as this guy. We all make mistakes, and your past is your past. I had seen what he had done, but I was like, that's not going to define who you are, because I've get to know who you are. And I don't think this paper that shows that you're something else is really who you are. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. So did you have any experiences with racism while you were engaged and falling in love?
Yeah, so when we first started talking, I was kind of involved in some local community stuff, activism with Black culture and youth, and just kind of advocating for change within our community. I could tell, I would get bad vibes when people would say, "Oh, you're bringing us down," or "Oh, you're telling this is all that's wrong with us." And then they would go on my Facebook search, do a little creeping a little bit, and see that, you know, we were together, we were in an intimate relationship with each other, you know, and they would start attacking our relationship. Like, you hate yourself, and so that's why you're married to a Mexican. They just really started coming for me. I think that being ostracized in my community is one of the main things that I receive as far as the racism. So it's like, in some of my pictures, cowboy jeans, cowboy boots, cowboy belt, hat, and then I'm married to a Mexican. You don't love yourself. You don't love who you are, and you're not really Black. And so I was getting that from my own people.
For me, it was a little bit different. I will tell you that I never had an issue with my family. That's something that he was a little concerned about. When we started talking, he said, "How's your family going to see this?" And I said, "For my family, there is no color. That's not going to be an issue." And it has never been. But, you know, I've seen people that I know. I don't never really had a friend that like tells me something on my face, but I've heard from other people like, "Oh, you know, they're saying, how can he be with a Black man? Don't you know the Black men are violent men? Like, how can she be with someone like that?" Or later on, when he decided to come out and talk about his criminal history, like, how can she be with a Black man who has done that? Or, you know, she wants to be a lawyer. He's going to just bring her down. I remember there was this lady from my town in Mexico who used to follow me on Facebook. She just started messaging me on Messenger one day, and she was reposting some of the pictures that I had with him. She will send emojis of like the little emoji where the face is throwing up, or like the disgusting face, and asking me why. What's going on? Like, what am I doing wrong? And things like that. So I think that was the harder one for me. But like I've always told them, I was like, for me, I don't see color. If they can't accept who we are, then we don't need them in our lives. Like, that's just not what's going to happen. The other one that I've seen is African American girls looking at me bad when I go somewhere with them. I do get that look like, why is he with her? And I even heard it from some of my classmates where they made a comment about, we Black girls, we fight for Black men rights, and yet here we have them, they are dating other people from outside our race when we're giving up everything we have for them. So that's what I've faced. I think that's having the harder ones.
Yeah, and Monica, I just want to reiterate this: me being ostracized or me being attacked because of Claudia and our interracial relationship, it hasn't stopped. It's ongoing. And I don't expect it to. I have no problem with it.
What I feel like is so incredible about you guys is you've kind of turned everything on its head. A lawyer married to an ex. Do I call you a convict? I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing. But
I am a convicted felon. And so with all we submitting a governor's pardon, it got denied a couple of years ago, where I wanted to not be faced with, I'm sorry, we did this background check and you are not eligible because of our policies here at this company. I didn't want that anymore. On the application, it talked about gun rights. I don't even want to restore those. I don't need those. I just want it to be, you know, it kind of extinguished, so it's not seen on my criminal background whenever employers look me up. Maybe last month, I went for a thumbprint. So what is it? Fingerprinting, thank you. I went for a fingerprint so I can go into the independent school districts to speak to kids, at-risk youth. So the same youth that I could be beneficial to. And they denied me because of my convictions. That's another struggle that I'll be dealing with for the rest of my life. But, you know, it comes with the territory. So.
Yeah, what a neat story you'll be able to tell someday, though, like how you overcame all of that. So how did your families, Claudia, you talked a little bit about your family, but how did your family respond to your declaration of love? Not even having to do with race, but like having to do with, I know religion was a big deal and some different things there?
He has been like my first relationship. I had never been in love before I was with him. So I had never brought a guy home. So when we started talking, it took about, I think, a year and a half before I told my parents I'm talking to somebody seriously. They figure I was, because when I used to go home to visit my parents, they would see me on the phone a lot. The first month I was in Houston, my phone bill was $600. And so my dad was paying for my phone bill because I was going to law school. So he's like, who do you talk for so many hours that the phone bill is so high? But I didn't want to tell them yet, not because he was black, but I wanted to make sure it was something serious. So when I told them, look, they're not going to care about your color. They're only going to care about something, your religion. And sure enough, they did ask them, you're not a Catholic. How's that going to work? Because he told my parents, this is something serious. I'm not playing with your daughter. I'm not proposing right now, but I want you to know that I'm considering that. They said, well, what do you want to do? Because you're not Catholic. How's that going to work? I think that was the hardest thing for my parents. But I mean, at least from what I've seen, he may see something different. But my parents have always been very welcoming to him. My whole family. We have gone to many events on my family, weddings, quinceañeras, and things like that. And he has gone to some, not all of them, because sometimes because of work. And something that my family loves is that he's always out there helping. They always make that comment, like, he comes in here, he helps like set up, like when it's time to clean up. I remember one of my friends had a wedding one time, Brent's wedding. They were having some problems, so we just started serving people drinks while it was for photos. They were running a little late. And so that's something that my family, my friends have always loved about him. He doesn't care that he may just be a guest. He'll go there and he'll start helping. So I think that's how my family has always been very open to him, very welcoming.
Yeah, so with my parents, my family, the biggest issue was the religion. They really struggled with that, and they questioned, how are you all going to navigate that complexity? And so we kind of worked it out. I think by talking with my mom and dad, I kind of figured out what Claudia and I can do. And it's just a give and take relationship with religion and with different beliefs. And so I have talked about that in a prior interview with you, but that was the largest issue, because it's not just your religious beliefs and your faith. It's what are you going to pass down to your children? So it goes deeper than just you too. It's family, it's legacy, it's what you're passing on to your kids. And so I think religion was the biggest thing for us, or for my parents.
And one thing, I remember when I told my mom, and I told my mom, okay, now you can tell my dad about his criminal history. Because I was like, it's easy to tell my mom. I don't know how my dad's going to take it. And my mom said the same thing I said. I remember we were outside when I told her. My sister was there and she helped me. And my mom said, well, as long as he's a changed man and, you think that's in the past, that's all that matters.
Another issue was I get a lot that I'm not good enough for Claudia. She's a practicing attorney. I've been in school most of our relationship. So we've been together over 8 years, and I've been in school most of that time. A lot of people say, oh, she's taking care of him. And I went out to the oil fields a couple of times in West Texas, but for the most part, I've been in school.
I love how dedicated you are to your education and to giving back. I love that. So what challenges have you faced together as a couple because of your skin colors?
Service, whenever we go to, and this is coming from the Black community, in my opinion. If we go to just throwing it out there, a McDonald's, I don't know if I should throw a name out there, but if we just went to a fast food restaurant, we went inside to get an order, this kind of snobby attitude, and then you kind of question, is it just because they're having a bad day? Or is it because they have a problem with what they see in our relationship with us together and then seeing our son? But when it happens on a consistent basis, that's when it becomes, hey, why are they treating us like this? So that has happened to us numerous occasions where we would get the attitude.
The looks, the attitude and the
looks, or we wouldn't get served right away. We would have to wait a little bit longer than I think we should have. That's one way I see it.
And, with that about the service and having to wait, we're very different. We have different attitudes. I'm very low back, okay, you know what? It's fine. I'll tell them, just come down, they get over it. They'll come and help us. And he's like, no. If they can't serve us, we get, So I always have to tell them, just ignore them. Because yes, we've gone to restaurants where there's no one in the restaurant but just us. And it takes them just way too long to bring us water. You can hear them just talking on the background. But I think for the most part, it has just been looks. We love country dancing. Well, not just country dancing, we like to go dance. And so sometimes depending on the dance hall that we go to, that can be bad. One time we went to a Spanish dance hall and they had to pat him down. No one else was getting patted down. And they asked him to take your hoodie because he was cold. So he was wearing a beanie on. And he had to take it down. They made him go to the car. And there was other guys that were wearing that. There was no issue.
Mm-hmm. And on the way into the bar, you could clearly see we were a couple and we were together. And there were a couple of gentlemen who chose to disrespect, either whistle at her, try to get her attention, clearly disrespecting me because we were together. So.
Yeah, so I think that has been the biggest ones that we have faced.
So talk about the differences you faced in your marriage because of your different upbringings, like disagreements and kind of how you've dealt with those.
Food. So, so food is a big one. We can go as small as cleaning supplies, Pine Sol, Fabuloso. I mean, we can
Yeah.
Louisiana hot sauce, Valentina. I mean, we can go. But no, seriously, we've gotten differences on opinion on the Virgin Mary in our home, the crucifix, the cross. We've got several differences when it comes to religion. And so I think that's been like a huge one in our marriage, active some things that we had to kind of navigate just recently. So
I think we saw how our parents dealt with finances in a very different way. And that was kind of hard because, we did it for 5 years, 6 years. We did it for a long time before we got married. While we were dating, we used to talk about this to try to make sure that by the time we got married, everything was taken care of. But it was still not like that. We still had to face that. And I think for me, it was finances, because he will tell me, well, in my culture, we do it like this. And I'm like, but my dad used to do it like this. Like, my dad told me how to do it. And I think that was the biggest one for me, the finances. We had different ideas of finances, and we had to figure out what worked for us. What worked for my parents and his parents may not have been what was best for both of us.
Holidays?
Mm-hmm.
So how she celebrates holidays in her home and her culture, different on how I celebrated growing up. So that's been huge. And then the frequency of when we go to her parents or when we go to my parents. But I think that's in every relationship. But just how you celebrate holidays. And so I think in a couple of years, we're going to transition to where as our family grows, we have one child now, as our family grows, we're going to celebrate it here. And then the day after, we'll go to our family members. So that's been another complexity.
Yeah, you touched on some big differences of opinions that most married couples at some point have to deal with. So from what you have experienced, what are your best kind of tips and tricks for kind of overcoming these big differences of opinion?
What are you willing to give? You always have to give. So marriage is always a negotiating process. You have to cooperate with one another. And for you to get your way, you're going to have to give something, and always be prepared to give something.
For me, I always tell them, hey, remember, like when, we're having a disagreement or something, it's not Team Claudia, it's not Team Rankins. I call him by his last name because when in case some people ask me, what do you call him by his last name? So he used to play football when we were in college. And so, there's always the last name on the back. So I just got used to calling him Rankins. So people always think that it's weird that I call him by his last name, but I always tell them, it's not Team Claudia, it's not Team Rankins, it's Team us. So I think as we work for whatever is best for us, that's the only way that we can deal with whatever struggle we're having, because it happens all the time. Cultural differences are just so different that even though we've been together for 8 years, we still struggle with some things because we just have very different backgrounds
and worldviews.
So I tell them, as long as it's about us and not about what's best for you and what's best for me, we can make this work.
And prayer, we have a vision board. And so if we can't agree on something and we're constantly butting heads, then I'll say, let's write it down, be very specific what you want, and we'll touch and agree on that issue, and we'll pray on that. Let God put it in God's hands and not of ours.
And I think another one for me has also been, we did a lot of premarital classes. Even before we were engaged, we just used to go to different classes, just to get kind of advices and things like that. The biggest one that I remember is that they said in a marriage, there is no windows and there is no doors. And so I think that has been the most important one in our relationship, because like any marriage, you have struggles, and sometimes it's easier to just say, you know what, I'm out. But I think as long as we don't have those windows and those doors, doesn't matter how hard it is, we can make it work. Because I always tell them, hey, don't even leave a crack open for Satan to come in this marriage. You close that crack. So I think that has been the biggest advice that I can give someone.
Yeah, I love that advice so much. If you were to describe your family to somebody else, what words would you use? You mentioned you had a vision board. So, like, what is the vision you have of your family?
If I were to describe in one or two words, different and unnormal. So we are not normal and we're very different, but we're faith based. So we believe. And as believers, walking by faith, not by sight, we're a family that prays together. Our son,
Oh yeah.
almost 2.5, before we break bread, he loves to grab hands and close his eyes and he'll pee. He knows the routine. He doesn't know what we're doing, but he finds joy in it. And there's pattern, there's consistency in a pattern. As he grows up, he'll learn to know that that is our norm. And that's something that's very important. Before we go to work or before she goes to court for a trial, we may pray in the morning time. And sometimes he's involved in that prayer, doesn't know what's going on, but he enjoys the process. We are a very prayed up family.
Yeah, I think with our vision board, just to go into that, we put in there what our goals are as professionals as well as for our family. Sometimes if we having some struggles or something like that, what do we need to pray about? What do we need to talk about? I think it has really benefited us. It took a while for us to get there because I was the type of person that we're having a disagreement. I want to talk about it right now and now. I don't care if it's 3 a.m, we're going to talk about it. And he was more like, no, let's go to sleep.
Let's sleep on it.
Let's sleep on it. And I was like, no. So now, okay, we talk about it a little bit. Let's put it on the board, pray about it, and then we can come back. And so I think, like he said, we may be from two different religions, but we both believe in God. That's something that we always tell people. I believe and he believes that we pray to the same God. We may pray different ways, but as long as we believe in God, we can make this work. And I think that's what will describe our family. We have God as number one in our family.
Always speaking life into our visions, always speaking life. So with the vision board, it's not just our goals and what we want to pray about if we have a disagreement about it. It's more as this is what we want. Our next home, 100 acres, 5 bedrooms. We're very specific. We speak life into our vision. And so that's another use for the board, vision board.
That's beautiful. I love it. So, how are you breaking the stigma and the traditional conservative views of America by going against the grain?
First and foremost, let me address that. Researchers, economists, they believe in year 2040 to 2055, the leading majority in the United States, the ethnic group is going to be Latinos, Spanish speakers. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if conservative America isn't ready for that, I believe that they're trying to kind of manipulate that number and slow that process down with immigration laws and closing the border. But those are the numbers. And so it's well known that by 2040 to 2055, Latinos are going to be in the majority in the United States. I think it's going to become more prevalent where you're going to see the interracial relationships. It's going to be there. I think that television right now on commercials, they're already desensitizing us to seeing that. Whether it's a Jewish couple, a Jewish and a white man, or a Jewish and a black woman, they're desensitizing us for this already. Just the same thing with the LGBTQ community. They're desensitizing us, because that is what's going to become the new norm.
Yeah, so I think we do see it more often now. When we first started dating 8 years ago, I knew a couple of my friends that were in a racial couple, but now I see it a lot. I always like to talk to people about it. Like, again, I don't see color in my husband. I don't see color in anybody. I just see a human being. But you do have to know that when you embark in this journey with someone that is not at the same race as you, it's going to be a little bit harder than having just a regular relationship. So just telling people, hey, be ready for that. You can do it. Just be ready. Have as much knowledge as you can about the different backgrounds, because y'all going to crash at some point. That, just be very open-minded about it.
I was a little bit more prepared because in my profession, you need to have some cultural competency. And so yes. I was very familiar with the culture. Being born and raised in San Antonio, predominantly Hispanics, I was already familiar with the culture. I knew what I wanted. And so it was a beautiful Mexican girl.
I love it. I love it. So how will you teach your sweet son about his family history and culture? Because it's a very rich fabric that he has there.
Do you want to start?
So I think we've already started. So we buy books. He can't read them, probably doesn't understand at all, but he loves the pictures and he points and he looks. And so that's a start. Learning about the culture, it starts with education. That's where it begins, education. I think as he gets older, he'll start understanding and asking questions. And I think that's how it starts, through the education. If we don't teach at home, then I don't think he's going to adequately, or our children are going to adequately get informed about history, the true history, because of the curriculum agenda in our public school. That's how we start the discussion. That's how we do it in our homes, is by book.
The books that we have is mostly about African American history. For me, I try to speak to him in Spanish. He knows pretty much the same when it comes to English and Spanish. My parents only speak Spanish, so my parents talk to him Spanish all the time anyways. His colors, children's songs. I like to play, like he calls it, the American songs, and then the songs that I grew up with when I was a little kid, so he can learn a little bit of both. With my parents, they love the ranch life. They love that, so every time I can and I can go home, we take him to the ranch. He puts his little cowboy boots. As a matter of fact, his first pair of shoes were cowboy boots, little cowboy boots. So we introduced him to that lifestyle as well. And, he loves it. Even though we're from Houston, which is a big city, he loves being around cows. He loves being around horses. Yeah. He cries because we won't let him get with his uncle on the horse. So he's just talking to him about it and showing him, exposing him to both cultures. Like, I think when it comes to food, the same thing. He can eat American food as well as he can eat Mexican food because we expose him to all that.
So our babysitter, we strategically wanted to hire a Spanish speaker. She's from El Salvador, and the food is different, which is perfectly fine, but just him getting exposed to the food, it's a different culture, and the language, the Spanish is slightly different, but he's still getting Spanish. And so that was very, very important for us. I think all of our children need to be fluent in Spanish. And moving forward, with the numbers I just gave you, 2040, 2055, I think it's important for us to learn Spanish.
That's so cool. I had a Spanish nanny growing up. She was from Guatemala and she lived in our home and she helped raise me. And so I learned English and Spanish at the same time as well. She spoke Spanish to me during the day and then my parents came home and she only spoke Spanish. So my parents had to speak Spanish to her, but they would speak English to me. And so I learned them both simultaneously. And I mean, it's probably been 20 years since I've had to speak a lot of Spanish, but I still know it fluently. I mean, I learned it at the very same time as I learned English. So I think that's amazing that you're teaching your children to be bilingual, because I think that is a very, very important skill moving forward, like you said.
Even though, like I said, my first language was Spanish, my parents only speak Spanish, but I've noticed that I have to really tell myself, okay, speak to Abram in Spanish, because a lot of times I call myself talking to him in English or speaking to him in English, but we want to make sure he gets both languages. And so I noticed, at least for me, it was a little hard to get myself in that mentality. Make sure that when we do the numbers, the colors, they're in Spanish. Yeah. So he can get them down. He has daddy who can help him with the English.
So good. Okay. What do you hope that your kids will remember about their mom and their dad?
Pray. Family who prays together stays together. And so if he doesn't take anything else away from this marriage, this family, the dynamics of this family, he knows to pray with his wife and his children to start the day, pray before meals, and don't just pray for the meal, but thank God or his higher power for bringing the family together, for the opportunity to break bread together. For me, that's probably the most important thing.
I agree with him. I think prayer, him knowing you got to trust God, the most important thing that I want him to get. But to add something else, I won't have to copy my husband, that I want my son to know that if you want to be with someone, it doesn't matter who they are. That's your love, you can go. It doesn't matter if they are different culture, different from another country. I'm an immigration attorney, so I work with people that find love in a whole different part of the world. And I've seen that it can happen. And so I want my child to know that if that's what happens and that's really what you want, fight for it. And it will work. It will take time. It will take a lot of fights, a lot of struggles, but it's worth it. I always tell him, like, I don't see myself with any other man. We've been together for 8 years, and my friend makes fun of me because I tell her I still get butterflies in my stomach when I see him get out of his car, when he comes home or we go eat and we meet somewhere. I still get those butterflies on my stomach. So I want my son to remember that whoever he falls in love with, he fights for true love. He'll be happy at the end of the day.
So sweet. Oh, I love that. Okay. And my final question that I'm asking all my couples is, when all is said and done, how do you hope others will describe and remember your marriage?
I can't stress it enough. We are a family, a married couple who, by together growing closer to each other, we focus on going closer to God. And so it's that triangle. I don't know if you've heard about this, but when you and your wife are in a covenant in marriage, you two growing closer together, and you're moving towards God.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. I don't know if all your viewers are faith-based or religious or have higher powers, but for us, that has been primitive in our lives.
I mean, again, I agree with him, but I don't want to copy everything he's saying, so I'm just going to add a little more. It's just a couple that did not give up. It didn't matter what they were faced with. We have not given up, and I pray and I hope that we never give up, because I know we still have a lot of struggles to face. It has been our color, race. I've been with him a lot of times when he has faced issues because of his criminal conviction, even though it has been on the past. I see how it gets to him. He gets a little depressed and all that. It has caused, a little tension in the marriage, but we haven't given up. I have learned, just give him time, try to figure something else to make him feel better. And I mean, we have faced a lot of issues in our marriage.
Adversity.
Yeah. And throughout the 8 years that we've been together, 3 years that we did long distance, that was hard. Long distance was so hard. But we have never given up. Never given up. So I think that's how I would like people to remember us.
And taking divorce off the table. So if that's not an option, you won't consider it. If it's always an option, then it's a way out. So if you just agree at the very beginning or throughout the marriage, say, hey, it's off the table, we're not even going to bring it up or discuss it or think about it. I think that's important.
Well, I love you guys. This has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much for your time today. Tell the viewers how they can find you if they want to continue the conversation or learn more about you guys and kind of your marriage and your beliefs. Where can they find you?
I'm most active on Instagram at minor2major.tx, minor2major.tx. If you want to learn more about kind of my philosophy and how I raise my child or how we raise our child, I've got a book on Amazon as well. Right now it's on the Kindle, Minor to Major, how I turn my minor setback into major comeback.
Oh, I love that. Why do I not have a copy of that? Oh my God. We'll link that in the show notes. So make sure you send me a link to that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I'm not as active as he is, because I always tell him that he's way more active than I am. I know we have different, like different things going. So
line of work.
Yeah, so he's more active than I am, but I am on Instagram, and my Instagram name is Claudia_Pasillas, my maiden last name, which is Pasillas. Or if you just go to his, you can find me there. That's probably the easiest way, going to his, and then you find me there.
Abram has one also.
Oh yeah, Abram has one.
Abram has an Instagram as well. What is that? _Prince_Abram. And he's got the cutest photos ever.
I love it. He'll either love you or hate you for that one day. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.